And our next speaker is Mandy Rose, and she is with the California Recycling Market Development Zone Program. She's the director of the San Benito County Integrated Waste Management Regional Agency. She oversees the operation of the landfill, refuse recycling, and hazardous waste collection contracts and is responsible for the greenhouse gas reporting and incorporating sustainability principles into the government policies. As you can see nowadays, and people in government are wearing many, many hats. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mandy, who will give us her insight in her 5 minutes and suggestions.
Thanks, Heidi. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of those of you who know Steve Loudsey. How many people know Steve in this room? Say, for those of you who know Steve, I'm going to channel him for a moment. I have to wear his hat. I will read you. Steve is off on a long-deserved vacation to Kauai that was planned for over a year, and he was totally bummed, thinks Frank did it on purpose because he knew he was going to be gone. But what he asked me to say, he said, yeah. He says, please say for me that I'm very disappointed that I could not be present at this historic event, but I have a great excuse. And I want to thank Frank Farrell for his great initiative in organizing this coalition around an agenda that we at CARMDZ have talked about for many years, but haven't had the time or capacity to realize. And I very much look forward to seeing the fruits of the summit and working with all those gathered to make this vision a reality. So having said that, what I'd like to share with you is really how I see this all started. I think it was about last March. Frank Farrell and I were having a conversation about markets. And Frank had just heard, and I'm not sure where it came from, but someone had said to him that somewhere between 80 and 90% of our materials go overseas. And he called me, he said, is that true? I said, where you been? And he said, no, is that true? I said, yes. And so as we continued the conversation, I let him know that in AB 939, and I'm not sure how many of you remember all this, but there is language about secondary markets. So back in 1989, the legislature did have the wisdom to say we needed to create secondary markets. That's one of the reasons why our association exists, and the Recycling Market Development Zone program was to help when those markets were created to market those materials. So Frank's next question to me was, then why didn't we do it? And I said, well, I think we all need to look in the mirror because it was simply easier, and Patty alluded to that. And her talk earlier today is that got more money, it was a path of least resistance. And so like a lot of things that we do in our economy where we look for short-term gain and not the long-term goal, we take that path of least resistance. And every time someone would start to say, hey, it looks like I might be able to build this kind of infrastructure and make a living here, oh no, I get a better price there, pass down the road. And appropriately so, Frank has used the term, we've kicked the can down the road long enough. And I think that, or I'm hoping that the indication of all of you being here is telling us that you recognize what we've recognized, is that the time has come to talk about this. I brought this folder, not because I needed to lug it around, but just to show you, these are articles just over the last year in almost every trade magazine that's talking about just what we're dealing with today. This is not a new idea. It's not unique. It's something that people have been trying to get to for a long time. And I think the issues, as Patty laid out, going on with China, there have been a lot of articles about China's standard of living is inching its way up towards ours. They're not going to be looking for our materials anymore. It's time that we started doing the right thing with our materials. And how is it that we do that? And what are the barriers? What are the challenges to manufacturers? Some of them are one of the bigger ones that have been alluded to by several speakers are regulatory certainty. And what we're hoping today is that with the collective wisdom in this room and ongoing beyond this is that we'll come up with 1, 5, whatever, 10 ideas that we're going to keep advancing. We get that this is a long-term journey, but like they say, it begins with the first step. So we're looking forward to input of everyone here today. We're looking forward to being your partner and more people joining the coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. So just so I'm clear, the one suggestion that you have, we know this is a really long-term, this is kind of the kickoff to a long-term project, and we'd like to leave today with some very specific ideas on what we could tackle, and then maybe get some volunteers to work on those very specific things and come back and report back and through emails and so forth, and continue this discussion, because it can't just end today. It has to be just the kickoff of a long-term project so that we see this all the way through. What suggestion? Did you have a single suggestion that an idea that the state could use as an incentive to keep the jobs?
I would go with regulatory certainty and creating zoning, for these materials, as John just alluded to about citing composting facilities, et cetera. If we can get some uniformity with zoning across the state, I think that'll help